Hi guys, my name is Tom, I'm the Tech Chap, and this is my definitive review of the LG Watch Urbane. Now this is the sequel, sort of, to last year's LG G Watch R. Although this actually has the exact same internals, the exact same hardware, it's undergone a bit of a cosmetic upgrade. It looks and feels a lot more classy, a lot more premium than the G Watch R. But aside from that, internally it is identical to last year's watch, although it does enjoy some slightly more recent Android Wear software, so that comes with a few extra bonuses. So it's very similar to last year's, and it obviously costs a bit more because it is newer, but find out why I still think this is the best Android Wear smartwatch you can buy right now. I think this is one of the first, if not the only, genuine smartwatch which I think looks pretty typical, pretty much like a normal watch, and that's a pretty good thing. I like the idea of a smartwatch, but I don't necessarily want everyone to see or know that I am wearing a smartwatch. It's functional, but at the same time it has the same form of a pretty standard looking watch, and for me that's one of the biggest selling points of the Urbane, and actually is obviously the design is the biggest change we're seeing beyond last year's G Watch R. But aside from that, it has a brilliant always on display. It has the latest Android Wear updates. The Urbane gets them first, or at least has been shipped with the latest Android Wear updates, which no other smartwatch has just yet. And also it enjoys one of the best, if not the best, battery lives of any smartwatch, except for of course the Pebble. But in the comparison to like the Moto 360 or the Apple Watch, this comes out on top by a good margin. So let's go a little bit deeper, let's go hands-on and find out why the Urbane is one of the best smartwatches you can buy at the moment. Now it features a 1.3-inch P OLED display, which is bright and vibrant, and actually the sharpest display on any smartwatch currently on the market, even beating the Apple Watch with its 320 by 320 resolution, translating to about 348 pixels per inch. That's compared to 302 pixels per inch for the 42mm Apple Watch. So it is genuinely very sharp, it's great looking, and although veering perhaps towards the warmer side of colours, it offers rich whites and inky blacks. Although exactly the same essentially as last year's G Watch R, it still doesn't disappoint. So speaking of things being the same, we also have identical specs internally to last year's G Watch R. We have the Qualcomm Snapdragon 400 processor alongside 512MB of RAM and 4GB of storage. So still pretty nippy, still pretty powerful, but we are still looking at 2014 technology. There's also a fairly typical lineup of sensors as well, including an accelerometer, gyroscope, heart rate monitor, and a barometer. The only thing it does lack, which I actually miss from just having used the Apple Watch, is a speaker and a microphone. It's also IP67 certified, so it is water and dust resistant, although I wouldn't necessarily take it in a shower, but I wouldn't worry about using it while it's raining. Since the hardware is pretty much identical to the G Watch R from last year, it's fair enough that we see pretty much the exact same performance and same responsiveness and speed throughout Android Wear that we did on last year's watch, but it is improved this time thanks to the latest software. This is actually running on Android 5.1.1, so there are actually noticeably fewer stutters and app crashes than on last year's watch. So more recent software, better software, but still the same Snapdragon 400 and half gig of RAM inside. So everything runs pretty much the same as it did last year. If you've managed to play with a Moto 360 or a G Watch R from last year, you're going to sort of have a pretty good idea of how this works, how this feels to use. And also, obviously, the Android Wear operating system hasn't changed that much. The best part of the latest software is it's actually enabled the Wi-Fi capability. Although a lot of smartwatches do have Wi-Fi built in, until the most recent update, they've sort of been left dormant. And so Android 5.1.1, I believe, has actually now sort of opened up, allowed it to be used. So you have access to Wi-Fi settings, which you can open up on your phone and log in through your phone, which now allows you to actually only need to be within Wi-Fi range of your paired phone as opposed to what was Bluetooth only. So as is the case with all other smartwatches, including the Apple Watch at the moment, the Urbane is currently the only one to have this update. You need to be within Bluetooth range, but the Urbane allows you to operate it with the same functionality but within Wi-Fi range. So that's pretty big, pretty good feature. And also the latest update adds in some wrist support gestures, so you can twist your wrist to open and dismiss certain notifications. So although not an awful lot has changed, it's still smooth and responsive and pretty fast, and it's a lot more stable than it used to be as well, so you get fewer crashes. So it's fun to use, and I do like Android Wear UI. Thanks to the large 1.3-inch display and familiar Google Now card interface, which sort of you're probably used to from your Android phone, everything is easy to press, and it's sort of not as fiddly as I found the Apple Watch to be in terms of pressing things and accessing notifications and opening apps. So I do quite like how it all works. I do, to be fair though, get a bit lost in the sort of settings and the cards a bit, although I do appreciate that you can use the digital crown on the side to return to the home menu. Sometimes I do feel that I get a little bit lost. It's a little bit cluttered, and perhaps compared to the Apple Watch, it doesn't feel quite as let's just say easy to use, but there's a little bit more of a learning curve perhaps on the Android Wear watch. But at the same time, everything is a bit bigger, as I say. It's nicer to use, and like any other smartwatch, it has a whole load of functionality and uses as well. Of course, you can use it to track your heartbeat and measure your distance, follow it where you're going on maps, or check your Twitter and emails. But one of my favorite features on the Urbane, although a few other smartwatches do offer it, is it's always on display. As you can see, it dims a bit and then comes up with a slightly dimmed but ambient display. And what this does is means that you don't have a big black void on your wrist at all times. It doesn't use as much battery, it goes into a dimly lit mode, but it is still there and you can still tell the time and see important sort of features and information at a glance. And of course, just a quick wrist flick should turn that on like so, or you can just tap it or tap the digital crown. So you can wake it up pretty simply as you would with any other smartwatch, but I do quite like that you still have a bit of a display there, so it's not just a big round black area on your wrist. You do get sort of a watch at all times. So the always on mode is great, and despite having an always on mode, still actually has one of the best battery lives on any smartwatch on the market, which is excellent. So on the whole, it's fast, it's easy to use, and actually thanks to quite a big range of apps now on the Android store, you can add quite a bit of functionality to it as well. In terms of watch faces, you do a sort of a long press on the screen to open up the gallery, so you can access one of, I think, 17 default faces, but of course you can download many more from the Google Play Store, which you can do on your phone. I'm actually a fan of quite a number of these. I think my favorite ones are probably either Pure, which you can download, which offers sort of a quite a refined, quite a stylish background. I also like one of the default quite sort of big ones. I think they call it Chairman Silver. I quite like it. It goes well with the silver bezel here. And the other one I quite like is one that is perhaps a little bit more childish, if I can go back to the gallery, is the GoldenEye themed Secret Agent. A bit of Star Trek L cars there. No, is the GoldenEye themed Secret Agent watch face, which I quite like. The left side, I believe, is your phone battery, and the right side is your watch battery, although actually that may be the other way around. I'll have to check. But certainly you can personalize this to suit you. You can make it look like how you want, and they don't have to be, old man style, refined and boring watch faces. You can, of course, get Star Trek or GoldenEye on your watch face, which is pretty cool. So as you'd expect from a smartwatch, there's a whole host of functions and features you can use and do on it, thanks to additional apps you can download, including actually Tinder I found earlier, as well as sort of Weather Pro and games. There's a whole lot you can do on your watch. Now, personally for me, I like using the Google Maps app, as well as Google Keep and Google Fit, a whole bunch of Google apps essentially, and of course using it for Google Now voice searches. But as well as that, and tracking my heartbeat and measuring my run distances, for example, I do think it's quite useful setting alarms on it. And you can actually also capture images from your paired phone's camera through remotely through the watch. And I'll attempt to do this now. I'm actually filming this with my Samsung S6 attached to the camera, which is offering me sort of a view of the camera feed. But then again, and then this is of course paired to the S6. So if I can get to it, hopefully I can, DSLR controller, I can then swipe and show you, I can actually then capture the image. So I'll show you the still of this in a second. So this remotely takes a picture of my phone, which in itself is connected to the camera filming this. So we can, it's gone off again now. So I can, let's capture it. So let's take this picture. And there you have it. And so there's quite a lot you can do with it. And of course, the best part, the most useful part, is just sort of not having to take your phone out of your pocket as much as you would otherwise. You can just do some of the things, not all of them, and it's not always as full-fledged the apps as, of course, the versions on your main phone. But you can get a lot done. You can save some time, and it is, at the end of the day, just a nice-looking watch. Now, in terms of the battery, it offers a 410 milliamp hour battery, which is actually surprisingly impressive and is just as great as last year's G Watch R, which lasted pretty much all day. This goes a little bit further, I think. I think at the end of a full day, with pretty typical use, I'd have about 10 or 20% left. as opposed to the Apple Watch, which I'd really struggled to get to at the end of the day with. So it's one, except for the Pebble, of course, it is one of the best batteries you can get on a smartwatch. So it really is a pretty neat feature of it. But as always, there are ways to extend battery life, have a slightly less dynamic background perhaps, or you can turn down the brightness. Even on the lowest brightness mode, it goes between 6 different modes. It's still reasonably bright. It's still usable, especially in dark environments. But if you whack it up to 6, it's also very bright. So sort of keep it on medium brightness. You can just sort of be careful with some of the apps you use, and you can always squeeze a little bit more juice out of it that way. So overall, the LG Watch Urbane is a pretty great smartwatch, but it's not perfect, unfortunately. It is a fairly modest change or improvement over last year's G Watch R. And I say change because it is just a design change, it's a cosmetic upgrade. And in my opinion, it does look nicer, looks more premium, looks higher class, but it is just a design change. And so design in itself is very subjective. You may not like it. You may prefer the slightly more practical, perhaps slightly more utilitarian look of the LG G Watch R. This is a lot more a sort of a higher end, slightly perhaps more businessman's class of watch, and in my opinion I think this is fairly masculine looking as well. I think whereas the Apple Watch perhaps is a little more feminine, this is definitely, thanks to the bulky bezel, on the slightly more masculine side. But obviously these are all very subjective things. You may disagree with me, so it's difficult to really say how much better the Urbane is over the G Watch R on the basis of design alone, because you may not like the new design or you may love it. So however you feel about it will obviously dictate how much of an improvement this is over last year's watch. Now, it's still a great watch. It's responsive, it's fast, it's smooth. There's lots of great watch faces, and there's more and more Android Wear apps, which is great to see. And I really like the fact that you can have an always-on screen. It will, dim to an ambient display when you're not using it, so you don't have a big black void on your wrist. And that's really something that Android Wear and the Urbane has going for it, as opposed to the Apple Watch, which I reviewed recently, and it's just sort of, when it's off, it's just a big black square on your wrist. So in addition to always on and being fast and responsive and having the latest software, which is great, there's not a great deal new to talk about with the Urbane. So again, we come back to the look and feel, and that's up to you essentially. So it's difficult for me to put a grade on it, a score on it, because this is going to be very personal. But unfortunately, as much as I do like this, it's just not comfortable to wear for me. Now, I do have relatively small wrists, and you may have bigger or smaller wrists, but thanks to this bulk, it just doesn't sit very well on my wrist, and it sort of juts out at the edges. It's not the most comfortable, and I can always feel it on my wrist. So as nice as it looks, as powerful and responsive as it is, I just don't see myself wearing it every day. I just don't particularly want to put it on. Although last year's LG G Watch R was more comfortable, this certainly does look a lot nicer. So I hope you've found this review helpful. I've really enjoyed reviewing it and playing with it. For more, check out thetechchap.com and follow me on the Twitter @thetechchap. And please do not forget to subscribe, of course, to keep up to date with my latest videos and reviews. So thank you very much for watching, guys, and hopefully see you again soon.